In the European Union, pharmaceutical companies rely on a unified standard for monitoring drug safety. They compile a pharmacovigilance system master file and appoint a single qualified person for pharmacovigilance, or EU QPPV, to oversee it. Under this unified system, safety data from across the continent flows centrally into the European Medicines Agency network. International pharmaceutical companies often assume that installing this centralized EU QPPV automatically satisfies the safety and compliance requirements of every individual member state. However, operating in the German market disrupts this assumption. Germany enforces a distinct, parallel, and highly rigid national legal framework for drug safety. German law demands the appointment of a specific, localized individual to manage these operations, the Stufenplanbeauftragter, or Graduated Plan Officer. This flowchart maps the pharmacovigilance lifecycle in Germany and the EU. During the marketing authorization procedure, authorities strictly review the entire system. In red, German requirements clearly diverge. They explicitly mandate a graduated plan officer be actively in post before authorization. Ignoring this national distinction halts the authorization process and immediately blocks a product from legally entering the German market. To secure market access, we have to map the graduated plan officer's legal parameters, their operational obligations, and their strict reporting interfaces with German authorities. Relying strictly on centralized European harmonization leaves companies with a critical legal vulnerability that threatens their operations in one of the world's largest pharmaceutical markets. The foundation of this requirement is Section 63A of the German Medicinal Products Act, known as the AMG. This statute applies to any entity placing finished medicinal products on the German market. That includes marketing authorization holders, co-distributors, and users of standard authorizations. Section 63A establishes 3 core duties for the graduated plan officer. They must collect safety reports, evaluate those risks, and coordinate the necessary mitigation measures. The regulatory burden increases heavily with a secondary text, Section 19 of the Ordinance for the Manufacture of Medicinal Products, or AMWHV. Section 19 forces the graduated plan officer to take on the systematic recording of quality complaints and the direct coordination of product recalls. These operational loads, specifically managing quality defects and recalls, are not standard legal requirements for an EU QPPV under European directive. To legally fulfill these duties, the individual serving as the graduated plan officer must physically reside within an EU member state. Their professional qualification is assessed case by case. Authorities evaluate the candidate's expertise against the specific risk portfolio of the company's products, rather than demanding a single standardized certificate. Because regulatory communication occurs primarily in German, a non-German-speaking officer must secure uninterrupted 24/7 access to qualified German-speaking support. The addition of the AMWHV mandates turns the graduated plan officer into a legally liable agent who holds direct responsibility for executing national product recalls. International pharmaceutical companies often attempt a compliance workaround by appointing the exact same individual to serve as both the EU QPPV and the German graduated plan officer. While a single physical person can legally hold both titles, the roles, liabilities, and jurisdictions attached to each title remain entirely distinct. That single person is effectively split into 2 legal identities, operating under different physical and statutory constraints. This diagram maps the divided scope. The EU QPPV sphere maintains a broad operational area across the European Economic Area, functioning as the primary interface with the European Medicines Agency. The German sphere interfaces strictly with local authorities to execute national mandates like AMWHV recalls. This visual intersection highlights the shared requirements between the 2 roles. Both roles share the burden of ultimate responsibility for the pharmacovigilance system's performance, and both strictly require continuous 24/7 availability. The necessity of activating the German role depends entirely on authorization types, specifically whether a company holds purely centrally authorized products or maintains national, mutual recognition, or decentralized authorizations. Products authorized centrally without a local German footprint might operate safely under the EU QPPV alone. However, acquiring any national authorization instantly triggers the strict mandate for a graduated plan officer. Managing national authorizations in Germany forces a company to activate a localized legal identity that the standard European pharmacovigilance structure simply cannot cover. To legally install a graduated plan officer, companies must execute a strict preemptive notification procedure before the officer assumes their duties. Failing to properly register this officer invites immediate regulatory action, severe inspection findings, and the potential suspension of commercial operations. The procedure relies on a strict dual reporting mandate. Notifications must be transmitted to two distinct government bodies simultaneously. The first node is the competent state authority, or Landesbehörde, which is determined by the geographic location of the company's registered regional seat in Germany. The second node is the higher federal authority, or Bundesoberbehörde. At the federal level, jurisdiction is divided based on product type. The Federal Institute for Drugs and Medical Devices, or BfArM, handles the vast majority of human chemical medicines. The Paul-Ehrlich Institute, or PEI, maintains jurisdiction over biologicals, vaccines, blood products, and advanced therapy medicinal products. This flowchart illustrates the required digital infrastructure used to bridge these nodes, the electronic PharmNet Bund portal. The data submitted through this gateway automatically diverges to both the state and the correct federal authority. Timing is tightly controlled. Unforeseen personnel changes must be reported within 7 days, and a fully qualified deputy must be registered concurrently to guarantee unbroken oversight. This dual-node system forces international companies out of the centralized European network and into direct, unavoidable administrative contact with sovereign German regulators. The ultimate test of this system is an on-site pharmacovigilance inspection conducted by BfArM or a competent state authority. Inspectors immediately look for explicit documentation defining the exact boundaries between the EU QPPV and the graduated plan officer within the pharmacovigilance system master file. As seen in this documentation checklist, companies must present detailed role descriptions, precise cross-references within the master file, and evidence that all dual-node notifications were successfully processed. The audit also scrutinizes the company's complaint recording logs. These systems must be fully operational and stress-tested. Inspectors will demand physical proof that recall decision procedures can be executed flawlessly and rapidly at the national level. During a critical safety event, the mandate for 24/7 availability becomes an immediate operational requirement rather than a theoretical compliance checkbox. When an urgent risk surfaces, the officer must rely on bulletproof, round-the-clock German-language communication protocols to coordinate directly with local agencies. The graduated plan officer is a legally liable nexus tasked with translating international safety data into immediate German public health action. While international councils and European agencies provide the broad framework for harmonization, successfully operating in the German market requires mastering the rigid execution of sovereign statutory law.